everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Sharon and this is a channel that is dedicated to all things related to narcissism. I release new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on all types of topics related to narcissism. So if you haven't already, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos. I would really appreciate it if you gave the video a thumbs up. It's a free way you can help me out. And definitely don't forget to leave a comment because I like to read what you have to say. The last video that I made was on Monday and I made this video with Joe. In the video, we talked about a conversation that we had had several days prior. I didn't really get into the specifics of the conversation, but essentially I was a little bit annoyed with Joe because I didn't want to do something. So we had eaten dinner and it was about 6:30 at night. And Joe said to me at that point, hey, why don't we go to bed and we can watch Netflix at 6:30? I was just the thought of doing that, because we do that more nights than I want to admit that we do. And a lot of it, almost all of it, is because of Joe's CPTSD. He mentions on the channel that he has it severely, and very often he doesn't sleep well at night. So once dinner's over, he kind of wants to get in bed and relax. That particular night, the thought of going to bed at 6:30 was just, I just couldn't, Now, I don't always go to bed with Joe that early. Sometimes I'll do my own thing, or we won't, or we'll do something else. But that particular night, I just didn't want to, and I got a little bit whiny with him. So he's like, what's the matter? So we ended up having this conversation, and I said to him, I felt like part of our problem, or part of the problem I had, was that we're not doing enough. We're not moving forward the way that I want to move forward. It seemed to me that there were a lot of conditions that Joe had, and the conditions I believed he had were that, because Joe and I, we talk about getting married. We talk about having a business together. We talk about buying a new house. We talk about our life, not the life now, but the life we want to live. We talk about our kids and where they're going to be, all types of things. I felt like Joe really had a lot of conditions on things where basically it really came down to our 4 kids. All of them, and they range in age from 16 to 22. They have to be at a certain place for us to move forward, that our life is really conditional on them. And there were a couple of problems I had with that. One, I'm in no hurry to have my kids grow up, and mine is the youngest one, the 16-year-old. I'm not really looking forward to him being all out on his own. I'm okay with it, but I'm not trying to rush him out of the house, essentially. Also, I felt like Joe and I each lost 20 years to narcissists. The last thing that I wanted to do was wait and wait and wait to have the life that we talked about, the life that we both wanted. So talking to Joe about this, it turned out that the way that I thought wasn't really what he thought. And so it was good. Like, we had this conversation. I understood him better and he understood what I was saying. Joe and I generally, we don't fight. Well, we have fought before, but what we do is we're good at speaking to each other and really getting to the point that we're trying to get to. And it was no different. So it was good. Like, I felt happy. We even watched Netflix afterwards and it was fine. But Joe reminded me at one point that he said to me, Sharon, where were we 2 years ago today? Now, Joe and I recently celebrated what we call our 2-year anniversary. It really wasn't. It was really the 2-year anniversary of when we first started speaking. We're friends. We didn't get into a romantic relationship until months later over the summer. But at that day in March 2 years ago, both of us were in such a different spot. We were married to other people. Now, for anyone wondering, we weren't cheating on our spouses. Both of us were separated. I was separated for over a year. Joe was just about a year. So we were separated. We both had financial difficulties. We couldn't afford to get divorced because neither of us could afford an attorney. Joe had recently had his car stolen by his ex, and there could be nothing done about it because technically she was married to him. Neither of us were legally separated. He actually had an issue shortly before we spoke where he was literally sitting in the dark because his ex didn't pay the electric bill. I had a similar situation. I was a stay-at-home mom for almost 20 years, and I went back to work, and because I had lost 20 years of a salary, I wasn't making enough money to pay for everything my kids needed, everything I needed. Our mortgage by itself was $3,000. Now, my ex would contribute occasionally, but he wasn't reliable on that, and I had kids that I needed to reliably feed. So I went back to work, but even with that, I couldn't afford propane every day. Well, every day, but not all day. We would never use propane at night. I cut down our propane bill by $250 by sparingly using it. It was horrible. Even though my ex is the father of my children, he had, we were legally married. He had, the mortgage, these things are in his name. He had a compulsion to pay them, but he didn't. he decided, because well, partly it was because we didn't have a legal separation, so there was nothing in place. I was afraid to get a legal separation because during the 2 years we were separated, it was a near constant fear that he was going to push himself back into the house. So I felt like if I'd moved forward with having a divorce, that's why I actually ended up leaving the state. That was part of the reason, because I knew he was going to move back into that house. And I'm going to just tell you right now, I'm going to say nothing else other than this. Only one of us would have survived him moving back into that house. Joe felt the same way about his ex. It was bad. Both of us understand each other. We lived some bad times. Our kids did too. That's where we were 2 years ago. Fast forward to today. We're together. We're happily together. We have a stable home. Our kids are doing well for the most part. Joe's oldest is having some issues, but for the most part, the kids are doing better. It's a better environment. We have food every night. The lights are on. We're doing okay. We're not doing fantastic financially, but we're doing okay. We're paying our bills. We even have a little bit of savings. We are in a drastically different position than we were 2 years ago. And when he said that, it was just a reminder that sometimes, you're standing, you don't look around in your own life. You're there, you're in a place, but you don't see it. Because maybe in my case, I wanted something else and I didn't know that Joe wanted it too. So I'm thinking other things and I'm forgetting all the things that we have done. When I was first speaking to Joe, this night, it was almost like we'd done nothing. It was still 2 years ago. But the gentle reminder, it made me realize, and I felt better. And, we had our nice night and everything was good. And that's important to remember where you were and where you are and how much life can change very quickly. In the last few years, cancer has touched me very deeply. It began several years ago when actually right around the time my ex and I first split up. Somebody that I love, somebody that I know had cancer. He was diagnosed with lung cancer. And it was pretty devastating. And he said that when he first was diagnosed, he was in shock. It wasn't me. And he had several second opinions, second, third, fourth opinion. Pretty shortly afterwards, though, it probably took a couple of days for him to get used to the shock, the fear of it. And I'm sure he had many nights where he was laying in bed awake, afraid. I get that. I'm sure he was. But for the most part, he accepted it. He accepted it and he took the time he had left. He was given about 6 months. He did live a year. And I think he lived double the time he was given because he was an optimist. He was most worried about his wife, making sure she was okay. He was worried about making sure he had one more Christmas, one more birthday. He wanted all those things, and that's what he lived for. He wasn't living to be afraid. He wasn't thinking, oh no, what if I don't make it to Christmas? Oh no, what if my wife's birthday comes and I'm not there? It was, all right, I want to make one more Christmas. God, please, one more Christmas. That's how he felt. That's how he lived. And he lived that way to the very end. It was beautiful. And I saw all the things that God can give somebody at the worst time of their life. It can be a joyous occasion. And I know that sounds weird, but that's how it was with him. Some of you know my dog, Tupac, passed away in November. My dog also had cancer. He had bladder cancer. And the day he was diagnosed, it was complete disbelief. No. He was only 11 when he was diagnosed with bladder cancer. And one of the reasons that I got Bichon Frises was because they live a long time. It's not unheard of for a Bichon to be 18, 19, 20 years old. For my 11-year-old Bichon to get cancer, no. And I was mad at God almost. How could you do this to me? I wasn't looking at it where it was really God's dog. And he gave me this dog for this time, but he was calling him home. I lived, and my dog was given 4 months to live. He ended up living 18 months longer. And throughout that time, he looked so good. You wouldn't have known he had cancer until the very end. He just didn't look sick. He was running around. He was doing everything. And so there was a part of me that believed he wasn't going to die. And I just kind of pushed it out of my mind. It wasn't until the last month or so of his life, he started going downhill a little bit. He lost weight. He was a big lion of a dog, and he looked a little scrawnier. He just wasn't the same dog anymore. But the love in his eyes, the hope in his eyes, for some reason, I don't even know if it was a week or 2 weeks before he passed away, I came home from work. And when I come home from work, the dogs get so excited because I always give them a treat. So, it's like the queen is coming in. So the dog gets so excited and the girls were jumping all over me. And Pac came in, my little Tupac, and he was having trouble walking, and he didn't see very well. His eyes were affected. He came in. I could see he was so happy that I was home. And I saw this, I'm sorry, I'm trying not to cry. I saw this love in his eyes, and there was nothing more I wanted than for this dog to be okay, for him to live a long time. And I realized at that time, I'm not going to be okay when he passes away. I was distraught over this. I'm not going to be okay. And he passed away, and it was absolutely horrible. But I had this, I'm going to tell you something that happened to me, and I know this sounds crazy, but it might bring comfort to somebody. It brought comfort to me. I was at work a while after he passed away, and I was standing there, and all of a sudden, I swear to God, I saw Tupac. I saw him. He was like right next to me, and as soon as I looked, it was him. And as soon as I looked to get a better glimpse of him, he was gone. But I saw him. I believe that God showed me a vision of this dog. I've been talking about this in my Bible group. I've been telling people I know. I get it. It sounds nuts, but I wasn't hallucinating. I saw this dog, all right, and he was his old self. He was big, beautiful. His fur was bright, bright, bright white. Sometimes we would laugh at the Bichons because when you see them, they look like they have this bright white fur. But if they go outside in the snow, you can see it almost looks like a little yellowish. And it's not that they're dirty. It's just they don't have pure white fur. But he did. And I feel like God blessed me by showing me he's okay. He's home. He's with me. And this meant so much to me because one issue I have, and you guys know I'm an animal lover, I've gotten mixed messages about animals being in heaven. Now, I have believed that they're in heaven. I can't not believe that. I can't even fathom never seeing these animals again. But to see that vision of him, it was a gift from God. And it was the most beautiful thing. He's okay. He was okay. There really is a God. He's with God, and I will see him again. It gave me such peace. Recently, cancer has touched me again. Somebody else that I love very much was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And I want to tell you his story because it's a reminder how quickly life can change. And this can be for the good and for the bad. So this man, he was diagnosed about 5 or 6 weeks ago with pancreatic cancer. Now, it started off, he was fine. Like there was nothing wrong with him. He was totally fine. Then he started having these stomach pains, and it was kind of in his back. So he thought maybe he was having kidney stones. So he went to the doctor. His kidneys were clear. So it didn't go away. He went back. He went to the hospital. The pain was severe. They admitted him, did a bunch of tests, and it turns out he has pancreatic cancer. 6-7 weeks ago, this person was in perfect health. There was nothing wrong at all. He actually was saying that he felt like that he's in the prime of his life. He's 53. He's 53. He said, I'm in the prime of my life. My kids are grown. I'm going to have this time with my wife. And he has a thriving business. Things were going fantastic. Now, today, right now, while I'm making this video, he's trying to enjoy I guess at this point, it's the last couple of days. He decided to wait to have chemotherapy until he had 2 weeks off to kind of do things with his family. He was originally told that he was going to have chemo and that hopefully the tumor would shrink enough to have it removed. It turns out so he was hoping for that. And he was a little worried about the chemotherapy because that's no joke. He didn't know he was going to have severe chemotherapy, like the heaviest doses that you can have. Then it turns out he had a biopsy. I think it was a biopsy. And what the doctors discovered was that the tumor is encased in blood vessels and veins, and it's inoperable. So essentially, they said there's nothing that can be done for you. There's nothing. You can have chemotherapy, and that will hopefully extend your life. He was given 6 months to live without chemotherapy, 12 to 18 months if he had chemotherapy. But there is an issue of quality of life with chemotherapy because he's having it every 2 weeks. And what it is he has it and then he has it again in 2 weeks. But some people tolerate it really well. Some people tolerate it, like for the first, say, 5 or 6 days, it's really bad. You get your butt handed to you. Then it gets better. And you can predictably assume, okay, 5 days I'm going to be miserable, but then I can have the rest of that 2 week span where I'm, fairly okay. And maybe the tumor will shrink enough so that I'm not in pain anymore. But he doesn't know. There are other people that are in misery and pain the full 2 weeks. So it doesn't go away and your quality of life is gone. In fact, his doctor told him that he would, he said to his doctor, well, what would you recommend? And the doctor actually said to him, I would consider just living your life out and having that 6 months. Then he said, but you have kids. So yeah, I guess it's worth a try with the chemotherapy. But he has not been given a life expectancy. There's nothing that they can do. It's essentially trying to prolong life. And it's so shocking to me that something like this can happen to him, of all people. Like if you know him, you don't no, it's like any of us. You don't expect that. I don't expect that in next week I'm going to be diagnosed with cancer or something bad's going to happen. You don't think that way. But life can change so quickly. And it's amazing to me, this person, just like my friend who died of lung cancer, he now has such a good attitude. He's doing the same thing my other friend did, where he's almost comforting other people. It's okay. I want to live my life. I want to do my thing. I want to enjoy the time I have left. And he has such a good attitude. And it's all, don't pity me. I don't want any pity. I don't want people crying around me. I want to enjoy the time that I have. It's a reminder. I'm telling you this to remind you that life can change in an instant. Sometimes it's for good, sometimes it's for bad, but to remember where you were and where you're going, and never knowing what is really going to happen, try to make the most of every day. All of us who have dealt with a narcissist, we know the agony that life can be. We know the pain it can be. I mean, that was partly why I was frustrated with Joe, because I felt like we weren't moving fast enough because we've already been through enough. I want to live the good times now. I don't want to be in misery anymore. But it was a reminder, Joe had to remind me gently, he was sweet about it, that no, we are moving forward. Look how far we've come. It's a reminder, and I want everybody to think about that. Where have we been? Where are we? And what can happen in the future? We need to take every day as the beautiful gift it is. And I'm telling you, if Joe and I can get out of these entanglements, so can you. The most important thing is never losing hope. Move forward. Remember where you were and take steps every day to get better. I used to pray to God to take my ex out. I wanted God to basically be a hitman for me. You know what I ultimately realized? Because I would get angry with God. Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing what I asked you to do? I realize now it was a huge gift that God didn't take my ex out, because if he had taken him out when I was still fully codependent, when I still had low self-esteem, I didn't have any value in my own life, whether he was with me or not, I was going to be suffering because I wasn't better. The truth all of us need to understand is that we are responsible for our lives. We have to be the best that we can be. And if we don't work on ourselves, it doesn't matter if you're with the narcissist or not. You're going to be living in hell. So it's just a reminder, and this has been on my heart, on my mind. I'm very upset about this person who has cancer. I don't want to say his name, but somebody who has cancer, and I wish him well. I hope you guys could pray for him. Please do that for me. I really, really admire this person, and it seems so unfair. But then again, it's kind of like when I saw my dog. I had that image of him, that glimpse of him. God blessed me in that way, and he was doing fantastic. All of us have a life ahead of us, and the most important thing is to remember where we were, where we are, and where we can go. Thank you so much. I hope you guys have a great rest of the week, and I will see you in Friday's video. Bye, everybody.